Stories and how stories can shape design. Like all buildings, they grow out of a need. This school district had a need for a special needs preschool. A preschool for students with challenges. But they also had, the land available was adjacent to their existing board office, a building that was affectionately known as the Castle on Kemp. So that'll give you some indication as to what their constituents felt about this building. So the challenge was to marry this castle, this mansion for grown-ups, with this, what should be a palace for children. You know, when you think of preschool, that's something different. That's something unique. That's something exciting. It should be special. So we began to think about, well, how do we do this? And we thought about it kind of like a geode. Now, I'm no geologist. I don't know much about geodes. But what I do know is that they're kind of hard and crusty on the outside, but they're bright and sparkly and almost magical on the inside. So we thought, wow, that could be a cool approach for our little preschool here. So if you ask any 3-year-old, they'll tell you that a castle has to have a tower, a place to hold the stories, a place for the magic to live. So we created this little tower facing a prominent street corner that will hopefully become the new icon for this campus. Not just, so it will become more than just the board office campus. Inside, we wanted it to be a place to sit and to read a story, to sit and to hear, and to sit and to be read a story, a place for your imagination to kind of run wild, to explore. So any 4-year-old will tell you that they have to have a sandbox. So we thought, well, what if the sandbox was partly inside and partly outside? And you begin to see that right here. But those locations began to organize the corridors. And the corridors became not only corridor, but they also became classroom, places that could open up, places to build, places to be an artist, places to perform. So with this sandbox, we thought, you've got to be able to play in the sand under the shade, right? And what could be more magical than Max's room that grew into the world beyond, the world all around? So we kind of abstracted these trees over the sandbox. You can see them here. They're pretty simple. They're abstract. They're just wood posts with some steel plates to bind it all together. And that began to organize the inside of our geode. But how does the rest of this courtyard become sparkly and magical? We took a nod from Bert Dow, the deep water man, who painted his fishing dinghy with leftover paint from odd jobs around town. And that striping, that banding, began to organize and articulate the interior of our courtyard. I heard Caesar say last night, a happy-looking place. And this, to me, is kind of that happy-looking place. So these bands of color are punctuated by the windows and the sills. And they begin to organize the elevations, kind of like a musical staff. The datum's on a musical staff. So the magic continued as we began to develop the interior of this courtyard. And we began to see a familiar little grin popping out, much like the Cheshire Cat in Alice in Wonderland. Is it there or is it not there? And the more we looked at it, the more we realized that it was there. A little smile poking out from what is the large motor or muscle room. And we played with this, and we thought, well, is this too cheesy? Is this too literal? Is it not sophisticated enough? But we were pretty convinced that as 3-year-olds, this would be really cool. So it stuck, and it started to take shape. And this is a really long 20 seconds in between there. So every good story needs a villain. You all know what the villains are. Sometimes they are budget. Sometimes they are schedule. Sometimes they're just someone's stupid opinion. And we had all of that. We had all of those. There were thoughts about how do we How do we save money? What if we take these trees out, right? And that just kind of carved my heart out thinking about that. Or I don't really like the color red on this siding. What if we just paint it all beige? Would that be okay? So up to this point, the story had been something that we used around pinups or over a roll of trace paper to help us organize our thoughts. But desperate times call for desperate measures. So we packed up our stories and we took them to the client and we said, look, this is why it is what it is. It's about Max's room. It's about Bert's boat. It's about this silly little cat that comes and goes. And to my surprise, it resonated with them. They liked it. It made sense to them. It made it worth doing. It made it magical. So with a firm hand on the tiller, giggling gull flying along behind, he headed the tidily-idly back up the bay. They made it home just as the cock began to crow. Thanks a lot.